How are you, Arvind?
Hey Ulas, I'm good. How are you doing?
I am good. Good. क्या चल रहा है? क्या हालचाल कैसा है कोविड में?
अच्छा अच्छा है सब। अभी तो कोविड में, हाँ, कोविड में लोगों का चेहरा देखने से अच्छा मजा आता है। कहीं तो फेस
So
टू
I
फेस तो
think
मिल
I
नहीं
think
सकते।
Arvind, we are supposed to
वर्चुअली
speak in
सही।
English, right? We are supposed to speak in English, but that's exactly what we want talking about in this session, right?
Yeah,
Languages,
yeah,
right? Languages
yeah,
define India,
yes,
and COVID. For as the previous panelists were saying, COVID is the new CTO who is defining technology strategy for everybody, right?
that is
And I think for India, I think I was always someone who focused on the fact that we are defined by the diversity of our languages, right? And any progress on technology should bring all our languages into the fold. And AI, for instance, 20 years ago, when I started my journey in AI, language was the holy grail of AI. So you have multiple aspects of the AI. Language is one of the key ingredients of AI because we want to mimic how humans are going to behave, and language is the way humans interact, exchange information, right, and come together as a group. So language was key then. Language is key today. I think it is even more important today. But for over the 2 decades, I think whilst leaps and bounds of progress have happened, I think the most of that has happened in the more popular languages of the world, like English and some of the European languages. We have not seen that happening in the Indian context, right? And so today, I'm very happy to be here having this chat with you, Arvind. And you have dedicated your life to bringing the power of technology to the Indian languages, and I'm aware of that. I would like you to take a couple of minutes to say how did you start on this journey? What motivated you to go this far, and how do you see this impacting? And we'll come down from there to how does it impact banking, and where do you see banking coming into play? But take
yeah.
some time to understand that.
Yeah, sure. So I will not take a very long time. Maybe just a couple of minutes to introduce what we are doing. So it's been more than a decade now. Almost 11 years since we started this journey. And what you see today when the importance of language is seemingly very apparent, that was not the case when we started. And you'll be surprised to know that when we started, it was it will be a surprise for people who are listening to me today, but it was a shock for me at that point in time that the mobile phones that we saw in 2009. So 2009 was like 2009 10 time frame, which is when we started. Smartphones were just about foraying into this world, right? Google had released its first Android version, first commercial Android version, I think, was Gingerbread. Froyo was the one, and then of course Gingerbread. And surprisingly, the phones in India couldn't even display text in Indian languages, right? And somehow, if you managed to send any kind of text, it was not displayable on mobile phones.
Mm-hmm.
And 2009 was also around the time when we were starting to see that mobile phones were no more niche; they were starting to get into the hands of the masses. So, kind of at that point in time, we decided that we will start building what are called the building blocks of the language infrastructure for the phones, which is display capability, input capability. And you may be surprised to know that Revry was the first company in the world that built display support on Android through our partnership with Qualcomm, not just for Indian languages, but for 30 South Asian languages that were not supported on Android. So that was our starting point, and our vision from there on. What we started with until date has remained pretty simple. Our vision is that we would like to see every Indian use the internet in their language as easily as an English language user is able to use that. It's as simple as that.
Okay, good, good.
So we would
So
love to see that
yeah,
happen.
correct. So it's been almost a decade now, right? You said 2009 when you started. What has been the change, right? So one is the journey and technology that you're doing, right? But is the market ready, right? Are people ready? Do people realize that we can use this technology to enable, I would say, the second tier, the next billion of India, right? So you and I, because of the way we speak, I mean, I understand that we both were not very comfortable with Hindi, even though we grew up speaking it, right? We have changed our own thought process. So maybe all that Western civilization change, the improvement in technology which has impacted them also has impacted us. We are the 1% of India, right? But how do the next 99% get benefited? Are they going to see that change, right? And I would come back to down to the context of this session, the audience here, which is mostly in the banking space. And I feel that banking also has remained the domain of that 1% in India, right? It is not as widespread. It is not easy. I mean, I can tell you, I grew up in the western part of India, although I am from the south of India, so I speak multiple languages. Even then, when I go into a bank in Bangalore here, I always use English. I don't use Kannada as a way of communication. Neither is there an expectation that I would use Kannada as a way to communicate, right? So there is that expectation that banking is for a certain segment of the population who is happy to use or who is very comfortable with English as a language, right? Maybe it's a remnant of the Raj days still, but how can we? So where are we in terms of the journey, right? From your experience, have you started working with banks? Have you seen that change in the leadership that says, okay, let us now start being more and more inclusive. Let us take at some of these languages. What is your experience and how has it changed from 2009 to now?
Yeah, so you in fact asked a lot of questions. One is whether technology is ready, right? I will come to the trends that we are starting to see in banks and for that matter other large enterprises that we have been working on. So let me first address the part of whether technology is ready or not. Here I will mention very two simple things. One is that technology is of no use unless it really solves a real world business problem.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And to be able to solve the real world business problem, it all boils down to the user, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how user friendly or user centric we are making it. Now let's for a moment take the dimension of language out of the equation. Now, if we say that the problem is a solved problem, a technology problem is a solved problem for English, to be able to deliver that experience for the users, right? There is no reason for us to believe that the same cannot be achieved for Indian languages. And
Mm-hmm.
where Indian language technologies stand today, I firmly believe that the technology is ready. It is there to deliver that experience. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, coming back to the change that we have seen and what is it that I would like to see, let's say for banking or for that matter, other large enterprises, is that one, fundamental. So the change that I have seen is that earlier the belief was not there. So I basically classify all the decision makers who are there in businesses, they're all English speaking decision makers. So it's very difficult for them to really keep themselves in the shoes of a user who just does not understand English. Let's take for an example someone who is going to the ATM, right? I mean, this has happened with probably almost all of us. A stranger comes and tells us that this is my ATM pin, right?
Yeah.
Can you withdraw cash or can you tell me what is my account balance? Now, we would not like those kind of situations to happen. We would like every single bankable user to be empowered. So, coming back to, so I have basically classified all the decision makers, even though they are like English speaking, they understand English very well. There is one set of decision makers who are believers that this is something that's required. One set who are not believers. And here I'm talking about take a bank that has got an inclusive strategy. I'm not talking about a bank that has got a strategy to target, let's say, niche customers, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Only the customers who are supposed to speak English. So here I'm generalizing that my assumption is that all the decision makers here are kind of their strategy is to have inclusive base. So I was saying that, so I classify them as one is believers, one non-believers who don't believe that language is essential for increasing their user base and then of course meeting their business objectives. And then we have certain set of decision makers who I classify as fence sitters, who say, okay, there are some people who are doing it. They are the first movers ones. And then what happens? What's the impact? Based on that, I will decide which direction to take, right? So lot has changed in terms of the number of non-believers to the believers to at least fence-sitters in last 10 years. That's a big change that I have definitely seen, right? Which is very encouraging. And there are initiatives which are there around what is it that we can do about languages, okay? How will voice play a role over there? How do we include the ones who are literate? How do we also include the ones who are not literate? They can't read and write their text. Now, what I would definitely like to see changing going forward is that I would like to see the decision makers taking a lot more holistic approach. I mean, stepping back and saying that the system that has been designed so far is designed ground up for users who are English speaking, right? Now, how can I design a system that is designed for a user who does not know English, who doesn't have to go through an interface that is English? I will give you a simple example, right? So how about designing a system where a language preference of the user is captured by the bank whenever they onboard that particular user? The moment that is done, every single digital channel, the alerts that you are sending to the user goes in that language. The app opens up in that language. Your internet banking opens up in that language, right? Your IVR call center responds directly instead of language selection. It all is, everything seamlessly is in that language, the language that the user prefers to communicate. So that's how I would basically summarize what has transpired in last 10 years and how I would like to see the approach to this particular challenge going forward.
Okay, I think those are points. You mentioned there are leaders who are already believers in the fact that you need to bring language of inclusiveness in language. There are a few who probably do not believe it is possible or feasible. Some are sitting on the fence. Maybe they have a fast follower strategy, right? They want somebody else to take that plunge. Why would that be the case? Because in my mind, if as a leader in a banking industry today was thinking of setting up an English-based IVR, they would only go for into the market of manufacturing. There is no thought process. There is no working that English language IVR cannot be implemented. Or I won't be able to chat in English, right? So is it a sense that the technology itself is not mature? Is there a need for that sort of an education to say, is the technology mature enough? Should we have, and is it also grounds up need, right? I don't think even our education system today emphasizes anything. Do we have enough engineers coming out who have the ability to look at the native language, understand the language, the morphology of the language, the way the language is built, understand, create those taxonomies, create those ontologies, and then support this? Do you see a fundamental change in the way the entire ecosystem has to start thinking about it? Is that the reason?
I don't think it is. It is the magnitude of the problem is like at an ecosystem level that we have to wait for things to evolve. There are smaller steps that we can take. Okay, let me first address the taxonomy and the standardization thing that you talked about. Okay, now it's a very good point. Now let's say the banking industry it's not very big, right? The people who are in decision making, they can all come together. That's not a very difficult task. First and foremost, can we just standardize the taxonomy of banking in Indian languages? Let's say account. Now, would we want our users, no matter what language preference they have, to address account as account or an equivalent like khata? Okay. Now, if we standardize that, banking terms are not too many. Correct. And the nature of queries for banking from the customers are also pretty much predictable. Now, once we standardize that, and users know that this is what is acceptable, no matter which bank I cut across, this is acceptable. So that's something that we can definitely do. Okay. Now coming to what is the other reason that there could be fence sitters. One is that there is not enough research data already available that if I do this, then what is going to be the ROI or what's going to be the impact, right? Okay. Now, I would say no organized research that is available that we could directly rely on. So there has to be derived information about that. That is one challenge that I can think of. I'm not sure that this is one of the challenge, but it is my assumption. The second one is that the very fact that India has got 22 languages, right? And even if we whittle down further and say there are about 10 to 11 languages which are popular,
Okay.
that itself could be overwhelming. But
Yes.
it should not be like that. Now, we can take just one language and we can replicate the entire user journey across the board with that. And this, in my opinion, I would strongly suggest that this gets backed by strong user research. User research is something that I would definitely urge all the banking decision makers to really invest in. We take a lot of decisions about language users based on our assumptions and hypotheses, which may not be correct, right? So with that user research, if we are able to deliver starting right from user acquisition to user engagement and retention, user communication, any kind of upsell that we are doing, upsell information that we are giving to our customers, right? Every aspect, okay, becomes very usable, as friendly as English language. We just take one language, and it's a no-brainer. So Hindi becomes like 40% of the user base. Let's take Hindi and do it across the board, and then it becomes very easy for us to replicate downstream for rest of the languages.
Okay, that's very good. Thanks, Arvind, for that. Now,
I mentioned about customer support, right? So customer support is an important piece that comes into play as well.
Correct. So I want to also ask you this, right? So now suppose somebody is deciding that they want to go on the journey of getting a language, right? Or a non-English or native language to come in. Is there a different challenge when we are talking voice versus written text or emails in the language, or it's a common engine that will work for both? Would they need to have a separate system for managing voice versus all the other written correspondence, or could there be common engines, common learnings, etc.?
So I would say that the technologies for text and voice would be different, but there is no reason why there has to be deep customization for every single bank, right? It's for bank. Once it is there for bank, it is quite replicable. Okay. So let's say if you're deploying IVR for customer support, right? Now once it is there, it has been designed for bank, then it can be replicated across all the banks. So you do not have to do deep customization. But to answer your other question, yes, the technologies will be different for text as well as for voice.
Okay. And so while we speak about banking, right, have you seen more successes in maybe in retail, or are there other areas where more vernacular languages are being brought up in terms of speech, text, or everyone is on the same level? Are there successes that banking leadership can look at and say, look, I see success there. Maybe in this banking domain, I don't see a success, but I see a success in some other place. And maybe I can use that as a statistics or data to say, what's the potential ROI for me?
So are you asking that are there successes in other domains?
Domains. In India, I'm saying in India.
Apart from banking?
Apart from banking, like for instance, are like Ola, Uber kind of services, which are also very B2C, very customer oriented, where they need to talk to all of the folks. Are they using this, or any retail organizations using this? Do you see that other industries are catching up faster, and that could act as a benchmark for banking for all the people who are?
I can definitely give several examples. So we had done localization of the drivers application for Ola drivers, the driver application, right?
Okay.
80% of their drivers actually use the application in local languages, not in English. Then the appointment bookings that happen through Practo, okay, 40% of their appointment bookings happen dynamically. Those appointment information actually goes in local languages, right?
Oh.
Then we have been working with government. So G2C, government to citizen services, we have seen good amount of traction across various government to citizen services, starting right from agriculture to Ministry of IT driven initiatives. So those are some of the things which are there. And education is another domain that we are starting to see that is emerging, where education education delivered through digital channels available in local languages. That's one important area that we are definitely seeing. Now, so I would also like to mention that bank, you already have a captive audience, right? These are the folks who are walking into your branches, meeting people physically and building relationships, right? So there is no reason why you can't just replicate that experience digitally by just trying to understand that what is their language experience and have your entire digital experience in that language as well.
Great. Arvind, I know we are probably up on our time, but I'll just quickly summarize. Right? I think it was a great conversation with you, Arvind, as always.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me here. I mean, it's very enlightening for me. And what I understand from your journey is that you have seen, you are only seeing positive, right? You're saying that where you started 10 years ago to where you are now, I think a lot more inclusive thinking is coming in leadership, whether it is banking or other sectors. There are success stories in other sectors, right? Maybe banking leadership wants to look at that. They should certainly look at that. For instance, I feel so positive about the fact that you mentioned 40% of Ola drivers are using local language interfaces, right? That's a huge, I would say, recognition of the fact that you need to embrace language in India, right? And so similarly, I mean, government has the services. I think those.
I mentioned 80% of the drivers, Ola
80%
drivers,
of the drivers.
yeah.
And
40%
of Practo. So Practo is mostly the client side, and the patients are getting that in that language, right? Not drivers, everything. Because doctors obviously speak English. So these are great statistics, right? And it's very happy to hear that. And I know Reverie is in the forefront, and there are many other players also in India who are coming back. And I'll close with one question to you, right? So Reverie does this work, but we also have the big players, the Amazons and the Googles of the world, who also provide support for language, right? What differentiates you from them, right? As a decision maker, if I am making a choice, why would I go with Reverie or a Reverie or a similar player in India? I know a few of them versus Amazon or a Google or an Azure, right? What is the difference? What is the secret sauce?
Yeah. So that's a great question, Ola. So we must understand that somebody like Google is designed ground up for B2C and therefore more generic, right? So if you were a decision maker, I come to you with two propositions. That Ulas, I understand your business objectives. I will work with you to address your business objectives, and I have various technologies, and it is my responsibility to put all those technologies together, right, to solve your business objective. So that's one proposition. The second proposition is that I have few APIs. There are some other companies who have few APIs. Now it's your responsibility to basically pull all of these APIs together and see how you're going to build a solution so that it meets your business objective. See, fundamentally, solving your business problem is the most important aspect. And that is where we take the responsibility of having a holistic approach to delivering that experience, no matter what technology is there. And by the way, most of the technologies that we have are also our in-house technologies, and we can bundle those to be able to solve your problem, business problem. So that headache of doing that is technology headache is not yours, it's ours.
Sure. And banking also has a critical component of privacy, right?
Yeah.
Is privacy something that you can manage? Let's say, for instance, are your services something that can be bundled into the bank, kept in the bank's data center versus something like a Google and Azure, which I know you go into their cloud, right? So it's not about banking. In general, there is that issue with public cloud services. So is that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, that's spot on. And not just banks, even government, right? There are sensitive information that government has, and we have done multiple deployments where our products and technologies have been deployed in private data centers. That's not a problem at all.
Great. Thanks, Arvind. It was nice chatting with you.
Thank you, Ulas. Thanks for taking our time for this. Lovely chatting up with you.